Hello everyone, hello everypony, I should say. Today I'm going to be talking about, among other things, but YouTube poops and everything regarding them and you know why I love YouTube poops, why I used to watch them all the time, why I don't watch them anymore, and to be honest, why YouTube poops should be regarded as one of the epitome of cinema. Short or long, I mean. I've never seen a YouTube poop be longer than 20 minutes, but 12 minutes? I don't know, like around that, you know. But, well, okay, it depends what you mean exactly by, what I mean exactly by YouTube poop. But like, if we're talking about YouTube poops that were self-identified as YouTube poops and uploaded on YouTube, then yeah, they're usually rather short or short films, the epitome of cinema, and short films. I mean, yeah, obviously that makes sense, right? If it's the best movie, it's obviously the best short film. It's, you know, if the opposite, maybe like it's not the best short movie, but it's the best. I mean, whatever. Yes. Whatever. What the fuck am I saying? YouTube poops. If you're not familiar, because I do realize that I'm getting old, so people might not know exactly what a YouTube poop is. YouTube poops were videos that were popular maybe 10 years ago, 15 years ago, or even more so than maybe 20 years ago, that where basically they were montage of usually viral videos or childhood animated shows like King of the Hill, Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, these type of shows, and the Mario animated show is very popular in the YouTube genre because, I mean, that's where a lot of memes came from, as well as the a few other video games as well, like the CD whatever, Zelda games. But yeah, I mean, there were montages of these type of audiovisual content where the goal was to basically chop and screw it until it's either you would make the characters, you would resequence some sentences to make the characters say vulgar or silly or nonsensical stuff, or you would, you know, change or do little edits to the videos that would make ADHD children insane, basically, because it would be like you would make lots of edits in a row that make no sense and are just like overstimulating, blowing out the sound, blowing out the colors, repeating the same milliseconds long sequence a bunch of times in a row, you know, like this kind of stuff. And maybe to illustrate my point, I'm going to make this video a little bit of a YouTube poop, at least not necessarily making myself say random things, because that takes a lot of time, but like, you know, the more absurd and abstract edits that are a bit easier to make, and you know. But yeah, basically they were also full of memes, viral videos at the time, stuff like that, you know. And they were, I mean, if you're familiar with MLG edits, they were kind of like MLG edits, but less edited on the form of the video, but more like and using different memes, obviously, but also like MLG edits don't really. If in an MLG edit you're trying to say something, you would use short clips of people saying shit, or you would use TTS, right? In a YouTube poop, you would take the words out of context and resequence some words to make the characters look like they say something vulgar or whatever. And I mean, I used to love these, and I don't really watch them anymore, even though they're still being made. I do watch them when I come across them on my YouTube front page, but it's definitely not something that I find often. But they're still being made. I mean, they've really not changed a bit. Maybe they use newer references and memes and clips and viral videos, and they're based on more recent media. Even though I still see like Simpsons, old school Simpsons episodes being YouTube pooped. So I don't know, but they were kind of fun, but I don't really watch them anymore because they are quite repetitive in nature. Not only are they repetitive in their structure, like sometimes you literally repeat a segment of the video a bunch of times, but they're also like based on running gags, and it gets old after a while, but really they were kind of good. And something that I want to say about YouTube poops that a lot of people might not know if you exclusively speak English, but I am not a native English speaker, and when I was a child, which is children are the primary target, I would say, and teenagers and that kind of people are the primary targets of YouTube poops, right? If you've seen YouTube poops, I mean, you probably wouldn't disagree with me there. But when I was a kid, the primary target of these YouTube poops, I did not speak English at all. I mean, a little bit, but not really well, and definitely not enough to understand YouTube poops and this kind of humor. So I couldn't really get access to the anglophonic sphere of YouTube poops, but that did not keep me and my people I knew from really discovering YouTube poops, because as a lot of things do, things reached France, because I'm French, and it reached not only did people like watch anglophonic YouTube poops, but they started also getting inspired by them and making YouTube poops in French based on French memes. I mean, French memes are not necessarily, don't exclude international memes, obviously, but there are memes that are in French and of France, popular in France, I mean, that were used in these YouTube poops. And using French TV shows and French, because every single piece of media that's like imported in France, I think has or is automatically, not like algorithmically, but it has to be translated and dubbed over. At least translated, they have to, obviously, but it has, I think, also to be dubbed over. So like, picture The Simpsons. Well, every single episode of The Simpsons is dubbed in French and stuff like that. And The Simpsons wasn't necessarily, even though like there is a French dub of The Simpsons, and like there is a lot of YouTube poops based on The Simpsons. Surprisingly few French YouTube poops based on The Simpsons, and I think that's pretty interesting, right? Because you have same for King of the Hill. King of the Hill is not very popular in France because obviously it's a very American show. You don't really get the references and stuff like that if you're not familiar with American culture. So obviously it's not that popular in France. But so that even though that makes sense, even though that there are French dubs for King of the Hill, that there would not be a lot of French YouTube poops for King of the Hill. And but surprisingly, The Simpsons is rather popular in France. So is SpongeBob, but you don't get a lot of SpongeBob or Simpsons YouTube poops in France. I mean, you used to not, at least when I was an avid watcher. It would be like some of my favorites were of Star Wars, of the prequel, because I mean the prequel has intrinsic meme potential, obviously, but the prequels, I mean, and stuff like that, But even though the same material as English YouTube poops were Anglophonic, were available in France, the French public and artists did not focus on them, which I think is very interesting, because that means, that it shows that French people and the rest of the world, like American or English people, have different sensibilities when it comes to media and parody. And I think, YouTube poops is a form of parody, right? And it makes sense that you would parody something that speaks to you and your culture, rather than, at this point, if you're making fun of something that's not of your culture, it feels very not inappropriate, right? It stops being lighthearted and nice, and it starts being a bit xenophobic, I guess. If it's in the case of maybe making fun of Americans as French people, but which we love to do, by the way. But for some reason, YouTube poops were not really the medium for that. So where was I? Yes, I discovered YouTube poops at a pretty young age, like most people do, and absolutely love them, as most children do. And but in French, and I'd like to explore a bit of the differences between francophonic, because probably a lot of them were just francophone and not necessarily French, but like, Belgian, Swiss, Congolese, Senegalese, Moroccan, all of the French diaspora, maybe even maybe Quebecois, I don't know, because these people, the people who make YouTube poops, were largely anonymous, though a few of them have become quite popular in France, and have basically entered, the not necessarily the mainstream, but like they've started, diverging from making YouTube poops. Like there's this one guy that makes music, and he's pretty respected as a musician now, and he started off making YouTube poops on YouTube. There was also another one who started making YouTube poops, who became a musician as a streamer, who also got pretty popular until, it got revealed that he was a fucking creep and got cancelled. But like, a lot of YouTube poop makers in France have made it into the mainstream, if they've not, completely disappeared. And I'm not very familiar with the YouTube poop scene, Anglophonic YouTube poop scene, at least not on that level, so I can't really say if it's uniquely French, a francophonic phenomenon, but, it's something that people who speak English might not know. And I find pretty interesting. Because necessarily, even though French speakers were inspired by Anglophonic YouTube poops, because, they called them YouTube poops. It's not like French people happened upon the same like format as YouTube poops and independently, right? It could have happened, obviously, but it's not what happened. Because, when you would click on a YouTube poop, most of the time the video would be prefixed with YTPFR, which means YouTube poop français, French YouTube poop. And even then, it's still interesting to see the divergence from a similar point into two different directions. Even though the YouTube poop is a pretty, restrictive format by nature, because, there's only so much jokes that are acceptable within a YouTube poop. But I do think French people who made YouTube poop, at least some of them, have to be inspired by some specifically French influences that are related to YouTube poops, but are not YouTube poop by definition, because by definition I mean like they're not calling themselves YouTube poops. And I'm thinking about, I mean, to be honest, obviously everything about French cinema, which is experimental French cinema, from avant-garde movement, from before and during and after this World War II, New Wave cinema after that. I mean, you know, French cinema is known to be quite experimental, and I think it's created an atmosphere in France which lended itself to the development of such an art form as YouTube poop, which is experimental short films, right? Technically, not necessarily experimental when you're making them after, you know, a certain how can I say what I mean? Because like when you're making your fucking 50th YouTube poop, making the same job and stuff like that, it's not really experimental. But like initially, like when you're discovering the field and stuff like that, it is experimental. You're kind of like trailblazing, you know, and which is why I think France was like kind of the ideal place for YouTube poops to grow. At least I don't know if other languages have developed YouTube poops. I actually don't know, but something that could have primed a French audience not only to make YouTube poops but also watch them and enjoy them, because it's not only about making, obviously it's about watching. It became quite a sensation. If a lot of people have reached the mainstream, they had to have been known before, and that before was them making YouTube poops. So is a movie that's called I mean, in French it's called the Grand Détournement, but in English it could be I mean, it's difficult to translate, but it's a movie by a famous French director, Michel Hazanavicius, which basically took a bunch of films, classic films, usually I think American, that were in the public domain, but so classics, Hollywood films, and basically used scenes from this movie to create an entirely new movie, a feature film, not a short film, with a completely new stories, with dialogue being completely overdubbed, but making them say different things, you know, changing the dialogue, not dubbing them to translate them and make them accessible to a French audience, but changing the story using bits and pieces from different movies, right? And so it's a YouTube poop in essence, somewhat. It's older than YouTube poops, but you know, this movie, which is quite popular in France, and at least for a time was, at least right now, these days I don't know, but it's quite older now. But I think it could have contributed to the proliferation of YouTube poops, as in it really is quite YouTube poop-esque as a movie, and it being in the collective consciousness of French people would have helped, I think, to create an environment that is prolific to YouTube poops. So, you know, that's I think that's a bit interesting. I don't know if anybody knew that. That's not, you know, because like unless you're French, I don't think you really have access to this universe, right? Because it's entirely francophonic, and I think even mainly French, like mainland. So I don't think it really exported itself. So I think it's nice that to show people, you know. and show the phenomenon that was and is still. I mean, YouTube poop is not as prevalent as it was back in the days, and it's really not that experimental anymore, to be honest, because you're just following the same old recipe. But I think as part of like the internet and this type of meme edits, like MLGs never really caught on in France. Like, I don't know any French MLG makers, and I think it's because, you know, MLG videos are mainly non-linguistic. I mean, not like in the sense that they are usually not. They don't include a lot of very long structured sentences in any language. You know what I mean? Like, it's mostly referential, and even if you don't really know exactly what the people are saying in the viral videos that are being used, you get the tone through, you know, exposition of to internet culture, right? If you don't exactly know what "mom get the camera" means, you can still, you know, understand it through cultural osmosis, because people who do understand it in French use it in France, and, you know, you get it from context, right? And that's why I think MLG never really like caught on from French creators, because we don't, being French doesn't had anything. And I mean, maybe some of them might have been, but I don't know. Most of them are anonymous, but, like, you know what I mean? French, I haven't seen an MLG edit using French memes and stuff like that, because MLG culture is really like not really tied to any other culture than internet culture, and general like gamer culture, which, you know, developed differently in France and the rest from the western of the world, right? So even like more recent type of meme edits have caught on more in France than they have in and I think they also have in Spanish speaking countries, like from a bit more, because nowadays the internet has been very, very fragmented, and every single like language has its own culture online, and meme culture and stuff like that. Which is why I think it's also interesting that even before this real strong fragmentation, French memes and YouTube poops still were a thing, even before like every language and country and little community had their own memes. It's quite a unique phenomenon at the time. It was, I think. So yeah, I mean, I don't really have any more to add, to be honest. Like, just I could go on like saying how I like YouTube poops and stuff like that, but it's not necessarily interesting. I mean, most people know what a YouTube poop is. If you don't know what a YouTube poop is, by the way, I do invite you to go on YouTube and type YTP. It's like the identifier people used to show that a video of theirs was a YouTube poop, YTP, you know what I mean? Also, yeah, something I never really got into, because this did not actually really become, I mean, okay, YTP MVs, basically YouTube poop music videos, were like edits. I never really consumed them, so I'm not really sure what constitutes a YTP MV, but basically it's I think it's a musical YouTube poop, right? And they existed in France and from French creators, but they weren't really called YTP MVs. They just were, you know what I mean? Like, and I think, I mean, it does correlate to what I was saying before, because music, you don't really have to understand what people are saying, so it makes no sense to really import it on, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not sure if I'm really clear, but like a song is a song no matter really the language, especially when it's YTP MVs weren't really heavy on the lyrics, so you didn't have to make it particularly French for it to be accessible to a French audience, right? You know what I mean? Like, so the label of YTPMV either never caught on or like barely caught on, because I'm not sure. I know of YTPMV creators in France, but and they have now kind of become some of the most popular YouTubers. I'm talking about what's his name? Currently known as Durka, but he used to be called something else. YouTunes, I think. I don't remember, but whatever. Like they were very popular, but never used the YTPMV label, as far as I know, because really the YTPMV kind of blew up outside of the YTP, the wider YTP community. You know what I mean? Like, meme edits of songs very quickly, or even existed before YTPs, YouTube Poops, and YTP MVs, and some people who made meme edits of songs, or song edits of memes rather, never gave themselves the YTPMV label, because what's the difference? You know what I mean? They weren't part of the YTP movement, but they still made YTP adjacent content, only musical. But because they did not come from the YTP movement, they did not think to call it YTPMVs, and I think it's also what happened in France. You know what I mean? Because I don't know why actually, but I think it's still interesting to know, maybe if you have an idea why song edits of music, song edits of memes and viral videos are prevalent to just pure chaotic YTPs. Maybe if you have an idea, feel free to say it in the comments, but I don't know personally. I don't have an idea why. So yeah, I mean that's all I have to say about YouTube Poops for today. And yeah, bye bye.